we're live streaming.
You know, I thought maybe we stood a chance because they would be pulling all the turns out. People would come from home south from right in front of Trader Joe's. I'm not sure.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. It is 6 o'clock on September 29th. This is our monthly workshop. Mary Ann, can we get roll call?
Yes. Mayor Young.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sartori.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon.
Here.
Councilmember Painter.
Here.
Councilmember French.
Here.
We can just let the record reflect that Councilmember French and Mayor Young are participating by Zoom. We do have a quorum. Okay, the first item on the agenda is discussion on limiting hedge height on residential property. Jeremy?
Thank you. Discussing at the July 10th regular Village Council meeting, a resident came to the Village Council, asked for us to consider a code for limiting the hedge heights. Obviously having some issues with his neighbor's hedge encroaching upon his property. So the Village Council asked staff to put this on an agenda and do some additional research, do some comparables. We have provided some comparables to other cities. I think working with legal, we've captured the legal essence of what the property owner is responsible for, as well as the adjacent property owner. And so we have that for discussion, and if council would like to move forward with anything, any kind of code, we can definitely put that together. So you have some backup information if you have any questions. I know Keith can elaborate more on the legal requirements if that's a need. I will say from our background, from our staff, this is the only complaint that I've heard in my 6 years, and staff hasn't heard of any other complaints of this nature in my time. So if that helps.
Council comments?
This is Jason.
Go ahead, Jason.
Somebody went first.
Go ahead, Jason.
A few comments on it. Like you said, this is a one case incident currently. I do have large hedges at my home as well, and they do protect my view from a larger house behind me. So I can kind of understand both sides of this argument. Anytime I do get my hedges cut, I let my landscaper go, knock on my neighbor's door, see if they, need me to trim them for them, even though you don't necessarily have to. Just some neighborly etiquette there. And I think for me, if just as a one incident, I'm not in favor of adding more restriction or ordinance. I think this is something best left to neighbors to have those conversations to figure out. And I don't normally agree with the state on items, but I think that the state's language is good language that we have used up until now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, unless there's been more incidents, and I feel for, the resident that was in here, it sounds like, there's some issues there with the neighbor, but if it's just an isolated situation, I'm not in favor of passing an ordinance for this.
All right, I'm on the same page. With my history working with council members, we've never had an agenda item put on the agenda for one complaint, historically wise. I have heard on my time on council complaints about neighbors' trees hanging over their yards, but it never came to council. It went through code enforcement and it was resolved. So I'm not in favor of us doing things like this as far as hedge heights. I think that's a slippery slope for us because our side setbacks are very narrow already, and with the McMansions going in, a lot of them, that's their only option for privacy. Again, I haven't heard any complaints about other hedge issues other than they might be too close to the road, and guess what? Code enforcement goes out there and they ask the neighbor to trim them back, problem solved. So I'm not gonna do anything with this. I think we should just leave it be. I think it's a property owner's responsibility to trim them, and that a neighbor next door may go out and trim it up on their side. And if there's anything beyond that, code enforcement needs to get involved, and then the proper process needs to go in place before it even comes to council. that's it.
Mayor, I'll give my comments, and if you're available, you can go last, like if you were here.
Okay.
Okay. I agree with what's been said so far. Seems to be a one-off, that if it has been historically handled by staff or through code, then maybe even a friendly visit from the village could just say, hey, can we trim that up, or get the two neighbors talking. But I am on board with what my colleagues have said, that I don't really feel there's a need to legislate this at this point. So I don't see a point in moving forward. Mayor?
Yes, I agree. I think we can monitor it. If we receive more complaints, we could always revisit. But also the hedge height, I don't know if that actually resolves a problem of overhanging onto another neighbor's property. Those are kind of two separate issues. So I think we should keep that in mind too. If we get more complaints, just because you have a hedge height limitation doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to take care of overgrowing onto someone else's property. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any comments from public?
No comments.
No. Okay, so I think we're in agreement that it's just something we just monitor and don't bring it back unless it needs to come back again?
Agreed.
Clear for that? Council? Okay.
Yep.
Item number 2, discussion of right-of-way ordinance revisions and additions. Doug?
Good evening. Tonight, I want to introduce a draft revision to multiple chapters in the code. These are existing chapters. We're referencing Chapter 30, which is vegetation, Chapter 50, property maintenance, Chapter 60, which includes streets and sidewalks and other public places, Chapter 70, driveways and off-street parking, Chapter 74, which is stormwater management, that includes swale and right-of-way design standards, Chapter 78, which includes zoning for landscaping and setbacks, and then also included in your packet and on the PowerPoint, this brief PowerPoint, is Appendix A, which is a recommended approved plant list. I also wanted to just say up front too that the revisions that we're introducing here is just standardizing the code, the existing code. And these practices are not unique to Tequesta. Every city across the state of the United States has restrictions in their right-of-way and policies and codes. So we're in alignment with what's standard practice. So we're talking about unifying right-of-way, swale, and landscape ordinances, right? Aligning village codes to protect infrastructure, safety, and aesthetics. The purpose and goal of standardization is to protect the substantial investment the village has been making and continues to make, upgrading and replacing underground utilities, infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, swales, and to date approximately an $8 million investment in our infrastructure. This ensures the investment in public infrastructure is preserved for long-term community benefits. It's also important that this initiative is not to issue violations to pre-existing conditions. Instead, it's to ensure that projects and private investments do not undermine village's funded infrastructure projects. There are some exceptions in there to artificial turf and some driveway and swales that have recently been put in without permits. So staff has completed a comprehensive update to multiple ordinances governing right-of-ways, swales, landscaping, driveways, and maintenance. These revisions unify standards across the code, ensuring consistency, clarity, and enforceability. The goal, again, is to protect stormwater drainage, infrastructure, public safety, and village aesthetics, while making requirements clearer not only for residents, but for staff. Down to the basics, right? What is the right-of-way and what is the swale? The public right-of-way is land owned and controlled by the village for public use. It includes streets, sidewalks, swales, utilities, medians, and drainage areas. The swale, which falls within the right-of-way, right, is a sloped green space designed to carry and absorb stormwater, prevent flooding, and protect water quality. However, it's more than just drainage, right? Swales also provide space for all your underground utilities, your sidewalks, your driveways, street trees, access to corridors that serve residents and businesses. And properly maintained swales and right-of-ways ensure safe travel, reliable services, attractive streetscapes, and resilient infrastructure. Why is this important, right? This aligns multiple chapters in the code so that resident staff and contractors, especially contractors, can follow the same clear rules. It removes conflicting language and creates one reference point for right-of-way, swales, landscaping, and driveways. It also standardized fines, permits, and responsibilities, making the code more enforceable and transparent. This also, again, protects the stormwater drainage, public safety, and village aesthetics. Why permit inspection and compliance fees are important. This ensures that all work in the right-of-way and swales is performed to village standards. It covers staff time, inspections, and restoration when violations occur. It encourages property owners and contractors to follow proper permitting and installation requirements. It applies consistent rules and penalties, creating equal treatment for all residents and all businesses. It safeguards our stormwater, our utilities, and public safety by providing oversight. And then violations trigger stop work orders, fines, liens, and special magistrate review to ensure compliance. Typical standards for the right-of-way. All work within the right-of-way requires a permit for inspections and fees. For example, if you're redoing your driveway, you're going to obtain 2 permits. You're going to obtain a permit for the private property, the driveway that falls on the private property, and you're going to get a secondary permit. This already exists for the right-of-way. You'll have 2 inspections. One by the building official and his department, and one by either Marjorie or myself and staff. Turf restrictions, right? Artificial turf is not permitted in the right-of-way or swales, and only approved sod grasses are allowed. Hardwood trees are prohibited in the row and swales due to root and utility conflicts. Only shallow-rooted approved species may be installed. Manager and I have talked about exceptions for village-funded projects that do not conflict with infrastructure projects or existing underground utilities. Driveways must be constructed of concrete within the right-of-way. We have standard driveway details for the right-of-way. Pavers are only allowed where there's no sidewalk and village approved. They must also follow and conform to our approved paver detail. Swales must maintain drainage flow and must also follow the approved swale detail. Tree removal, no trees can be removed or planted in the right-of-way without a village permit, and trees must not obstruct visibility, stormwater, or utilities. Plantings must maintain clearance from swale center line and site triangles at the intersections. Allowable plant list. We have a list of ornamental grasses and wildflowers we're recommending, and we have approved sod and turf grasses. The approved grasses and sod were selected because they are Florida native and or Florida friendly, drought tolerant, and compatible with swale and right-of-way drainage. They provide stormwater absorption, erosion control, and low maintenance coverage while avoiding damage to underground utilities, roads, sidewalks. Excuse me. Artificial turf and hardwood are excluded to protect stormwater flow, safety, and infrastructure longevity. I love this picture right here. What don't you see in the right-of-way? So everybody has this in front of their home or their business, right? And in that little footprint, you have all of your underground utilities that provide services to all the residents and businesses. You have stormwater, you have water distribution, your drinking water, you have Florida Power and Light, you have AT&T, you have Comcast, you have your sanitary sewer. And in that footprint, we need room for all of these utilities. So when you look at that right-of-way adjacent to the property, everything is sized accordingly for the whole community, the entire community. So everything within that right-of-way is a 4-inch pipe, a 10-inch pipe. You know, it's sized for the entire community. When it branches off and goes to the individual houses, it's a much smaller utility pipe, right? Might size down to 3/4 or 1 inch or a fiber optic cable. A homeowner has the benefit of planting anywhere within that property, on their private property, because the utilities can be separated out on the property. So for instance, if you were going to plant on your property, right? And let's say whatever that is in the back, you know, whether it's a shed or, you know, mother-daughter house in the back there, right? You certainly wouldn't plant on top of those utilities going to that house, because at some point you're going to have an irrigation break, you're going to have a water break, you're going to have to get in there for maintenance or a break and fix that. Well, the same holds true in the right-of-way, right? It has to be protected and it has to be serviced and it has to be maintained on an as-needed basis. If we're planting out in the right-of-way and there's no boundaries, People just put anything you want in there. And when a project comes through, for instance, the Sequester Drive project, well, that's not good, sir. What?
Maybe,
There we go. Close the battery. So this is Sequester Drive right now, right? And that's your right of way. And the utility department is replacing an old aged water service line, 10-inch water main. This is what happens to the right of way. And why does this happen? Because you have to have room in the right of way, right? You have all those underground utilities that I referenced. On top of that, this is looking east, the other one is looking west. So when you're looking back east, you have our beautiful tree canopy. We also have sanitary sewer. We have Florida Power and Light has 2 lines in there. AT&T and Comcast have fiber optic lines in there. There's old twisted copper 100 pair cable in there. So in the planning of this project, I'm just going to go to the plans here. If you see, that's the water main coming down Sequester Drive, heading east from Country Club Drive. That's the section that I just showed you in the picture. And if you see, the contractor and the engineer had to deflect the new water main out into the road. So if you're out there and you're driving up Sequester Drive, you see half of the westbound lane has been taken out because there's no room in the right-of-way, because we have tree canopy in there with extended routes, we have sanitary sewer, we have all these underground utilities that are in the way, and they have to deflect now that 10-inch water main out into the road. That is your last resort, taking all of those utilities that I showed you and putting them in the road, because that turns into this picture. Get a water line break on Sequester Drive, that whole road is going to be closed to fix that line that's out on the road. The only time you really want to cross the road is when you have to go across the road and you try to bore under the road. But you don't take all of your utilities parallel and adjacent to your road and to your properties and put them out on the road. So we need room in the right-of-ways. We have to protect the right-of-ways, right? The other part of it, it's not just for, you know, your underground utilities. The village has invested millions upon millions of dollars on repairing and replacing sidewalk, replacing roads. I got here about 10 years ago, and I cannot even begin to tell you how many calls I got on a daily basis about this condition of the sidewalk in this community. How many trip and falls or near misses and fall on a weekly basis. There are people in this room that I know have fallen on the sidewalk and gotten seriously hurt. Right? So we're investing in our community, we're investing in our roads, we want safe connectivity, right? And we also need room for underground utilities. Well, we're spending money and we're rebuilding the crown in the road, right? So that pushes the water off the road. A lot of the roads had water pooling in the road. The roads were flat, right? A lot of defects in the road. And what happens when you push the water off and you don't have a swale, it's going to sit on the edge of the road like this. This is Sequester right here. It's going to sit on the edge of the road. It's going to sit in the resident's driveway. It's going to go up towards their, towards their garage. You have to build swales. You have to maintain your swales for drainage. We're spending a lot of money to improve our infrastructure, making it safe for residents to commute, walk around, enjoy the community. Part of this is the swale project, and I know Marjorie is working very hard on improving the swales throughout the community, right? So this is the reason that we bring this forward today. These are the things that we have to address. And if you go back to this picture here, I'm sorry. I love this picture because it shows exactly what you're up against in the right-of-way. And typically you don't see it, right? You step outside, you see grass, you see trees. You say, what are we doing? Why can't we put more trees in there? Why can't I just plant out there? People are putting structures out in the right-of-way. People are planting trees out in the right-of-way. People are putting pavers across the street so the mail truck doesn't drive on their grass. There has to be oversight in the village right-of-way. And this is a great picture that shows that if that were your home, I don't believe anybody would plant on top of any of those utilities with the risk of having to dig it up or damage your utilities that you'd have to repair on your own private property, right? It just wouldn't be cost effective. This is just very basic, right? So when we talk about right direction here, what would it look like? Well, this is an example of a sustainable right-of-way. There's your swale for your stormwater runoff, right? There's your ornamental grasses, and this is just a little snapshot, right? More can go in there, right? And there's your sod grass. Then at the top of the swale, you can plant, if you see further down in that picture, you can see trees planted in there. There's no reason that those trees couldn't be planted right on the property line or right on the resident's property and allow room for the water to get off the road, but also, you know, can understand that folks want to have some color, they want to have some plantings in the right-of-way, right? It looks great in the community. It really, you know, it really pops and looks nice. But we have to keep in mind what the intent of the right-of-way is, right? It's very important. So that's a great example of a sustainable right-of-way. Next steps would be to finalize the revised ordinances. We still haven't sent it to Keith for a review, and we still have to, Marjorie and I and the manager have to talk about fees. We haven't worked out fees. But we wanted to get your feedback and just explain why we're bringing this forward. You know, it doesn't matter what project we're working on, the phone starts ringing off the hook. To us, to the manager's office, to the council members. What are they doing? They're tearing up the grass in the right-of-way. What's going on? We just had a project at FP&L and Pike Electric are working in the country club, hardening poles, running an underground power line for the eventual 2026 underground infrastructure project with FP&L. When they go into the right-of-way, and we want to underground all these power lines and all the utilities and all the communication lines, this is what happens in the right-of-way. So when a project comes along, capital improvement project, whether it's FP&L, whether it's utilities department, public works, we're not putting back all the ornamentals and the trees and the light stanchions and the fixtures. It's going to be a swale and it's going to be grass. So you have to start somewhere. You know, over the years, many, many years, the right-of-ways have been taken over by vegetation and plantings and pavers, and you know, you see it out there. And you know, this picture is worth 1,000 words. What happens when you have an infrastructure project? This is what's going to happen to the right-of-way. Not in all cases, but for the most part, this is just a 10-inch water main. And this is what the right-of-way looks like. And half of the westbound lane has been taken out because there's no room in that right-of-way. So.
Thank you, Doug. Council member comments. Jason, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. I support the idea of the ordinance and the approach. I do believe this is one of those where a resident's decision to change the property or the swale in this case could affect other residents. It's similar to the situation we're having with the one-way water valves protecting our water system we discussed previously. So for that, I support the ordinance. I did have a question on the violations. It says there's a $150 violation, or per violation it's $150. What exactly is per violation? What does that look like? Are we talking per week, per month? You know, what is the idea behind that?
So, Council and Councilmember French, one of the things that I would like to do once this is sent to my office for review is take a closer look at the at that portion of it. I'm not sure that I would recommend leaving it in that status. So my recommendation, if the council directs us to proceed, would be to kind of keep an open mind on the penalty provision. My initial thought would be to just put this in the uniform code enforcement process that the village has already adopted. But I would like an opportunity to look a little more closely at the penalty provision and bring back recommendations. I'm not sure that I would recommend leaving it the way it is.
I understand. Thank you. And I would agree with that approach as well. Thanks. My other input is that I appreciate that there are options for residents to have some landscaping in their swale. I noticed that some of the other municipalities, there's 0 options given. I did appreciate that maybe some other native plants were able to be placed in those swales as long as a permit went through. Doug, thank you for all your work on this. I do support the main idea behind this thing.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else?
I'll go next. If everyone can just be patient, because this might take me a hot minute. In a nutshell, my thought on this is you guys are about, and I mean staff, about 25, 30 years late on asking for this. I do not agree with this approach. I don't think we should be going down this road. I think it's extremely aggressive. It's not gonna work for many reasons. So Doug, you and I talk about swales, and I support swales. I think when we look, and I don't know if it was you and Marjorie or whoever put this together, this is so layered for me and so complicated because it's not a one size fit all. And I say that because when I played for hours on the Papa map with property lines over the weekend, everyone's right away is such a drastic size difference. And in the corner lots, those are huge side spaces that would lose all landscaping basically, when there would be plenty of room to put a tree away from utilities. So I don't agree with that. When I look at the other municipalities, I don't think we can compare ourselves to them. I'm gonna use Palm Beach as an example. Their right-of-ways are teeny weeny. So I don't think they really even have that big of an issue because they don't have the largest right-of-ways, nor the largest property sizes. There's a lot of hypocrisy I'm having an issue with too, because one, for many, many years, we've been supporting more trees in the village, in the right-of-ways, creating tree canopies. What's the other one? Carbon emissions. So now we're talking about removing it and not allowing residents to do as much, when the very simple way that's been working, and if it's not working, I think we need to approach it in a different way. You need to call 811, call before you dig, right? Not saying everyone does that, but for me, that's the basic way to do it. So if you have an easement of 22.9 feet and your utility pipe is all the way down by the road, there's plenty of room to put a tree or a hedge or a different plant that's not on this list. I think this list is extremely minimal. Hypothetically, let's say council moves forward and we did a right-of-way with nothing, not even these little plants on this list. That's going to anger this entire village. And I do see lawsuits coming our way if that were to happen. Secondly, we've heard this before. I don't know if this council's heard it. We've heard it before where residents say, well, if I can't do this, is the village gonna come and mow my right-of-way? So if we really, really limit to what they can do, obviously being smart where they plant things, I could definitely see residents saying, well, fine, then the village needs to have staff coming out here every day or every week and mowing our right-of-ways. That's never gonna happen. We don't have the budget, we don't have the staff. What was another? There's so many issues. Oh, the neighborhood entrances, those are all in right-of-ways. And one neighborhood on the west, we occurred some landscape damage. So a permit had to be pulled to replace it, and yet the village signed off on it. So if there was an issue and there is a utility pipe there, why would they sign off of it? And then I want council to look at this too as, if you guys were to spend time on Papa and literally scroll around the different properties, so many people since I'd say maybe the early 2000s started the U driveway. Yeah, the circle driveways. The most common thing in the village I see is it goes all the way up to the house. And what is left is pretty much like 80% of the time, a little space where most of it lands in the right of way. So if that is not gonna be allowed, then we need to look at not allowing driveways to go all the way up to the house, because we're creating a problem right there by not allowing people to meet their code requirement in general of 1 canopy tree in the yard or 3 palm trees. So I see a lot of complications all the way around with this. I fully support bringing back the swales. I fully support smart plantings, like by calling 811, having your utilities marked, because there are many. I like that you put up that chart of how the utilities go into a property, because I guarantee you most people don't know where their utilities are going into their property. But again, that falls on the property owner, right? To be smart of where they're digging, if it's on their property line or within it and not the right of way. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Oh, the other one, the other hypothetical I thought of, I was told that the village would not be running around demanding current landscaping in the right of way to be removed. So if that's true, how do you regulate new plantings? Because we don't exactly have like an HOA type staff member that runs around and takes pictures of all the properties. So my concern is regulation of, if we're not going to literally go around and scalpel all the right-of-ways, how do we monitor anything new if it's not a new development house? And I'm not asking for an answer, I'm just throwing out that complication. I guess that's it for now, but again, I'm kind of getting confused on, the village has been so supportive of more landscaping, more trees. We put them in our own right-of-ways on the village roads. And we keep talking about carbon emissions, floodwaters. So I'm a little confused why we're backtracking at an aggressive level when we could be approaching this differently. If we were to look at taking back the swales, which I do support, I don't support it in this manner because we have no plan or budget to go out and rebuild swales. So if we're gonna go this drastic and aggressive, we don't even have a plan. So we couldn't even tell residents, yeah, because in 5 years, we're gonna be completing, creating all these new swales. So we're gonna take all this back without even having a plan of what's coming. And piping, I looked into piping, and Marjorie, correct me if I'm wrong, and God bless you, because I know you're taking on a ton of piping that should have been done 40 years ago, but previous village people, I should say manager, never addressed it correctly. So there is a lot, but the piping should last 50, 60 years. So, okay, so once it's in there shouldn't be a need to have to access it so easily unless there's an emergency. So again, I always return back to smart planting. Where could a tree of a decent size that's not super invasive go, that's not all the way up by the person's house or front door? And then again, I go back to the driveways. Most of these houses have driveways up to their house. So unless we're gonna change the driveway code so people can plant closer to their house and have a better opportunity to plant inside their property lines, I'm really stuck with how this would be pulled off in a friendly village to resident manner. And I think we could do a better approach. I think we do need to educate better on the right-of-ways. I know a lot of this might be coming up because of the other issues, and I fully support us educating it and getting back, but I don't see this going well if we go this route, this aggressive. That's it.
Thank you.
If I can answer a couple of those questions.
Sure.
Palm Beach County does not allow planting in the swale. You have to plant 2 feet beyond the invert side of the swale. That's part of their regulation and code. As far as maintenance in the right-of-way, the village already has an ordinance. It's not new, it's nothing new we're introducing, and it's in line with every city across the United States that the property owner occupant is responsible for the maintenance to the road. So whether there were trees or grass or anything else in the right-of-way, the homeowner occupant is responsible for the maintenance. That's not something new.
I know that.
That pre-exists, and that's every city across the United States. So we're not creating a new maintenance situation where, because we would ask the homeowner per code that when you're modifying your property, you're leveling your house, you're changing your vegetation, right? You're redoing your driveway, that you adhere to the code. We're not going backwards and saying you're going to take out the trees and you're going to do that. It's for new construction, it's for modifications, it's for new improvements where you have to come file for a permit, and there are going to be requirements, standard applicable requirements that are standard throughout the United States, standard throughout Florida. So it's not this revamp project where we're asking all the residents across the village to tear everything out in the right-of-way and we're putting in swales. It's going to be a domino effect over time. So right now what happens, for instance, Callaway Construction is doing a new driveway, and I go out, we provide a permit, we provide the standard detail of what the driveway should look like. The driveway apron requires a swale. They have to follow the profile of the road so the water gets out of the driveway and it doesn't sit in the driveway. And then my recommendation, I meet with the homeowner, I say, if you don't put a swale in your grass, this water is going to sit in your driveway. So whether you want to do it or you have a landscaper, it's a simple process of just following the center line of the driveway, peeling the grass back, digging the dirt out and putting the grass back, and the water will move out of your driveway. So when we do go out there, the homeowner will say, well, why me? What about my neighbor and the next neighbor and the next neighbor? And I share the same story that it will happen over time when they replace their driveway, when they redo their landscaping, when a developer or a contractor comes in, investor, and tears down the house, there has to be requirements in place. We're not asking residents throughout the village to tear everything out in the right of way. We're not going out and tear everything out of the right of way. But when you have an infrastructure project and you have that in your right of way, this, for the most part, is going to happen. Whatever's in there is coming out. So it's not like how would we get there and this is a massive project. It's from today, right? We already have things in place. We're just standardizing the language. These codes are not new, right? These chapters are not new. They already exist.
Exactly, that's my
So
point.
we're
They already
standardizing the
exist.
code and the requirements so we can protect the right-of-ways, protect the $8 million+ that have gone into the right-of-ways and will continue to go into the right-of-ways. And it's not just the village, right? When Florida Power and Light comes here and they underground every utility. All those power poles that are going in, they take all those power poles out and all that cable's going underground. Where's it going? Where's it going on Sequester Drive? You need room in the right-of-way.
And I
So-
fully hear you on that.
So this will be torn up once, maybe Loxahatchee River District, who manages the sanitary sewer throughout the village. You see that all over the place. They're trying to line pipe so they don't have to take pipe out, right? They're trying to do the best they can without digging up the roads, without digging up the right-of-ways. AT&T and Comcast, they're trying to do the same, right? They're trying to bore. Boring is not always successful. But, so it's a phased approach over multiple years that this will happen. This is not going to happen tomorrow. You revise the ordinances and the next year it's going to happen. This is years down the road. This is 10, 20 years down the road or more. Just like FPL's underground project, it's a 30-year project. This is a long-term phased approach.
And that's kind of my point too. Just these regulations already exist. If it's a safety hazard, you can't see around a corner because of landscaping, a tree is dead or it's cracking a sidewalk, code goes out there, addresses it, and then staff gets involved. And if someone's doing a new driveway, which my neighbor just did a new driveway, and he has a ton of landscaping in the right of way, so where's the flip-flop here? And that's why I'm getting confused. The FP&L guys, I know for a fact in our neighborhood, they had to talk to residents and tell them, hey, this section of your landscaping is probably gonna get ruined, and it'll get ruined. But a lot of times that landscaping's over a decade old because it's been there, and they'll address it. But I don't think we should just take away all the plantings or trees, because I think this list of choices is no bueno. I think there should be a lot more on it. I think it's very capable of doing a lot more. When you talk about the Loxahatchee district, I looked at all their little utility areas. They have hedges and landscaping all around them. So clearly they're not limited to such a tiny list. They're landscaping as well. I just want to make sure that we have residents pulling a permit and that staff goes out and treats properties, because again, they're all so different in size. Mine in particular, if we were to go through this in the future, let's say I redid my driveway and you come out, guess what? I have an adopted tree. Are you gonna tell me I have to remove that? And I'm gonna be losing about 3,000 square feet. I'm sorry to be exact, 2,290 square feet of opportunity to have shade on the road, half my hedges on the road. That's where I'm just, it's actually enhancing rather than you just coming out and saying, you gotta rip this. And then I get stuck with the confusion again. For many years, we've been sitting here promoting landscaping, and are we gonna hold developers to the same level? I mean, a lot of times they're creeping into the right of ways. I just wanna make sure we're not being hypocritical. We're just treating each property, they have to pull a permit, and make sure that each property is planting smartly. If they happen to have a very large right of way, give them an opportunity, show them where the utilities are, give them an opportunity to put something beautiful there, and not just say, no, 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 this is the only thing you have to choose from. That's all I'm asking, is that we approach it in a friendlier manner. When you have an issue like a new driveway or a new landscaping completely redo, or another issue, treat it individually and we'll get there. Just like you just said, we'll get there. If you are saying this is not a blanket, we're gonna be doing this in a year or two, then I think we stead fast, keep this course, and we'll get there.
And that's the approach. That's why we're revising the language in the
It doesn't
code.
read like that. And that's my opinion.
Okay. So I shouldn't be too long here, but so I've lived in several municipalities in Palm Beach County. I've never been able to plant my right of way anything that I can think of. When I moved up here, it was one of the first questions I had is what can I put in the right of way, what can I not? And the answer I got was, anything you put in the right of way, be prepared to take it out. That was a fair answer to me, and I've always understood that. With that, I put in some nice trees in my yard that are not in the right of way. They're still great trees that I think give, we all love trees. I don't think anybody in this room has a problem with trees. But I do think we need to, there are times where we have to trust staff, and we're investing a ton of money into our utilities and our stormwater. And I have to think there's not a reason there is a reason we're doing this, and that is to protect that investment we're doing. So I don't have a problem with it at all, especially because I think we're just taking a bunch of code that was, pretty disorganized to begin with and unifying it. And I don't necessarily think, there's the right of way and then there's where your yard starts. You can still have trees in your yard. It's just it cannot be in the area where the stormwater, the utilities are. I understand everyone's concern. Actually, I don't fully understand everyone's concern because I don't, like Doug said, this isn't being retroactively applied to everybody. You're not going to come in people's yards and just rip out their trees. But to me, I have never lived anywhere where you can put anything in the right of way. So I'm happy with this. And again, I have nothing against trees. I think we need more trees. I totally get it. But at the end of the day, this isn't my property. Frankly, I don't really want the village mowing my lawn anyway. But I have no problem with it. I think this is sort of being mischaracterized in my opinion. So yeah, I'm struggling to see the huge issue here, and I've read several emails. I think it's just being taken as if we're coming in and telling people no trees, we don't want trees. I don't see it that way. So just my opinion.
Thank you. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll go and you can wrap up.
Sounds good.
Okay. I've always said this, and I will continue to say it. I believe my role on council is to protect the health, the safety, and the well-being of our residents. When I look at this, I hadn't seen this before tonight. When I look at that is protecting the health, safety, and the well-being of residents. Just tonight, we got a text on the way here, it was an unincorporated Tequesta, but we had a 500-gallon gas tank get hit. Now, granted, we had nothing to do with it. It was a private property, and somebody was digging in their yard and hit a $500, and they're out there right now letting that bleed off. So it can happen even in your yard or in your right-of-way. So this is a safety and a well-being of the residents. For me, it's how I look at it. I think it's been addressed, but my first question, what happens to the existing right-of-ways? And it sounds like it'll be out there that it sounds, what I hear you say, Doug, is that when somebody applies for a permit, that's what will go out. So they're like, it's been discussed, no one's gonna knock on doors and say your stuff's in right-of-way. The village owns a right-of-way, period, end of sentence. And as was stated just a minute ago, they can come in and do it. But I don't think that's the intent. I didn't read it this way. I know we can read this, and depending on where we stand on the issue, perhaps I didn't take it as aggressive. I didn't take it as we're going to go ask people to rip things out. But my one question is, and I think it's been answered, how do we ensure common sense, through this approach? And it sounds like it is, the common sense approach would be as things move forward and somebody pulls a permit, that we go out and we address it with them, like you said, and one swale, one driveway at a time, we'll get there. I just want to make sure that we don't restrict, any of the right-of-way plantings that are consistent with the existing planning. So if it's there, like if somebody's got, say, a palm tree, small palm tree, one doesn't get more than 3 feet high, that's not an approved. If that's not approved, then they can't put that back in there, even if it was already there. But I'm okay with that, because when I look at the rainbow of colors that run through there, I don't know how deep that is. I don't know how deep I can go before I hit it.
Variable depths so they don't interfere with each other.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure we have common sense. And it sounds like the common sense approach is how we will do it as permits get issued. We'll talk to them and explain to them what our driveway needs to look like. Then, of course, the swale should mirror that. The water main projects, I think we've had 1 or 2 problems with them. So even the professionals that do this experience, because they're moved around after 75 years close. I'm sure some of these things have moved around and they've shifted, and roads and sidewalks coming in through. So even the professionals that do this have had a problem identifying where they are. And it's another concern that I have is that, we spent, I think we spent Friday afternoon and our first responders right now are in the county taking care of a project. And the tree canopies, yes, we have invested in an inordinate amount of time and energy to promote those. I know that's been part of the village leadership going back years and years and years. But I think when we do it on our own property, if I'm not mistaken, if we use a root ball container or something like that.
Root barrier.
So that we're doing things to mitigate probably the trees that in the past weren't planted with those, that perhaps created some of those issues before. And I guess how do we monitor, new swales? I think Councilmember Brandon brought it up. For monitoring new swales. So that monitoring goes back to before the common sense issue. We're just going to be able to, this is only going to be addressed with somebody if they pull a permit for some type of irrigation, driveway, pavers, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And as far as how do you mitigate that, we have code enforcement that drives the village every day.
Yeah.
Or whether it's Marjorie or myself or staff, and we see new plantings, new pavers out in the driveway going in without a permit. It's the same way we do it now, same way we conduct business now.
All right. So that's kind of, I see the importance of this. We're not creating anything new here. We're just, like you said, we're taking these 7 or 8 chapters plus the appendix and kind of putting them all to something sensible. So whereas now chapter 30 might refer to chapter 50 and it says go see it here and there. So we're jumping all over the place. So it'll make it easier for developers, builders, homeowners, things like that. So I see the point in this. I'm anxious if we do move forward this evening to what legal counsel will come back with on recommendations for fines and things like that. So I'm in favor of this for all the reasons that I just spent a long time describing. So, Mayor?
Hi, thanks, Vice Mayor. I just want to say I do appreciate staff streamlining and clarifying the code, and also adding that appendix with allowable plans. After speaking with a resident and searching our code online, the various violations that he received, it was very difficult to navigate our code. And this is coming from someone who knows how to do that. So I think this is long overdue. I do know that code enforcement has been issuing notices and violations as it relates to artificial turf in the right of way. So I do want to make sure that we're not, unfairly targeting anyone when we are performing code enforcement duties. One kind of minor thing, I was hoping we could clarify on the ordinance if rock or mulch is or is not allowed anywhere in the right of way, whether that be the driveway or the swale. And then I do support kind of the long game approach that Doug mentioned. I know we budgeted for some swale rework this upcoming fiscal year. I walked those projects myself and I fully supported that. I do ask that staff does provide an enhanced public education campaign on our right-of-way to educate the residents and businesses. And I think we need to make sure that staff has a unified message when speaking to the residents and businesses about the right-of-way requirements, because I think we've had some challenges with that in the past too. But I agree with Vice Mayor, especially when it comes to flooding and getting water off the road. It becomes a public safety issue. And this really is just kind of streamlining and clarifying existing code into one place to make it clearer and easier for residents, businesses, developers, even council members, right? Like I said, I really struggled myself clicking around all the various chapters of the code to try to find this information. So thank you for the time you've spent on this. And I guess the only thing I'd like to consider for a revision is clarifying if rock or mulch is allowed or not.
Mayor, that's already in the revision, and rock, mulch, gravel, and artificial turf are not permitted in the right-of-way. Concrete is in the driveway. Pavers are allowed where there is no sidewalk, so the pavers can continue straight through. But where there's sidewalk, it's only concrete. There's no gravel, no rocks, and no asphalt.
Yeah, I saw that for the driveway. Is it as clear for the swale?
Yes. And
Okay.
I'll go back and look at that, but that was in there.
Okay, I could have overlooked it. So yeah, if we could just double check, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Public comment?
Marisa Peri.
Maria Superi, I live in the country club. With respect to Mr. Chambers, as written, this code does require immediate compliance. And as such, this proposal should be rejected categorically. Enacting any part of it would be devastating to the village's property values and most likely also its drainage capacity in heavy rains. The worst of it is that it proposes, through fines, liens, and ridiculous permitting processes, to enforce against village residents a policy that is directly contrary to the expressed wishes of residents to have beautiful tree-lined streets. I have 4 main points. Number one, this is an unnecessary misappropriation of power by staff. There is no need for this proposal to enable the village to access underground infrastructure to make repairs and preserve the swales to prevent flooding. The village already possesses all of the power it needs to make repairs and preserve the swales. Instead, the plan gives the village the ability to severely punish residents for not clear-cutting the right-of-way in front of their homes. There is nothing in this proposal that restricts the village from requiring immediate compliance. I have to underscore that. This would require immediate compliance. Number 2, this plan would devastate property values. This proposal would destroy the beautiful mature trees and hedges in the village and accordingly decimate property values because by its literal terms, no trees are allowed in the right-of-ways. To be clear, the proposal requires that 1, all plants in the right-of-ways must be on the approved plant list. 2, any non-compliant plants must be replaced, i.e. removed, on pain of punishment. And 3, there are no trees or shrubs on the approved plant list, which means that any trees or shrubs in the right-of-way must be removed immediately. As such, this proposal is wholly inconsistent with our comp plan, on which residents have relied, especially policy 1.16.1, which states that, quote, the village shall consider its street trees as infrastructure to preserve and protect them as community assets, end quote. It's also totally in conflict with 1.16.2, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5. It is incredible that staff would propose an ordinance so completely at odds with the comp plan and wishes of residents. And to underscore this desire, look at the recent mobility plan where residents' top request was for more trees adjacent to the roadways. Number 3, the plan is antithetical to flood mitigation and public safety. The purpose sections pay lip service to protecting stormwater infrastructure, but by making the swales exclusively grass, they will encourage landscaping trucks to park on them, compressing the soil and causing it to absorb less in major storms. Heavy trucks parking on top of underground pipes might also damage them, probably more so than roots of bushes. Trees and shrubs in the right-of-way prevent parking, in addition to actually absorbing the rainwater. If staff believes that the slopes of the swales are not being maintained by residents, they bear a major share of the blame for that. In over 10 years of living here, there's never, to my knowledge, been any sort of general education campaign by the village about what the slopes of the swales should be, or even where they're located. It isn't clear that even if a resident sought to figure out what the slope of their swale should be, that the village could easily point to existing information to show them. That is not the residents' fault, but this plan threatens to punish them if they don't comply without telling them exactly how to do so. And that is extremely unfair. It's also unfair to threaten to fine residents who have pooling if the village doesn't intend to require immediate restoration of all of the swales, because the swales that are put in or do currently exist will have pooling in front of them. Due to time, I'll briefly state point 4, there is a major litigation risk for the village if it proceeds with this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry.
Marcia Nielsen.
Marcia Nielsen, I'm in the Pines, and I support Lori, and I support Marie. I read it. I didn't do as much research as you guys. I saw it as very, very aggressive. I have the Riope in my swale. So I guess that I'm gonna have a $150 fine. And that's how I read it. I didn't read anything about being grandfathered in, nothing in the background. Now maybe I missed it, but that's not what I read. I think it's aggressive, and I think, and the plant list is not the plant list that the homeowners have that gives me. The homeowners say I should plant something, you're saying I'm should plant something else. So, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pull everything out, and you guys can deal with sand.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
I do have a follow-up question. Wayne is not here, so I guess I'll direct my question to Jeremy, but it ties into what Doug mentioned, that the goal is not to go and start finding basically 90% of the village who is grandfathered in. But I go back to regulation. So how would code regulate new plantings? And I mean this with all respect. We go through code enforcement officers like candy. So every time we get a new one, it's happened a lot this year where people get upset because they got all these code violations taped to their door, but technically they were grandfathered in. So how do we educate new code enforcement officers who are driving around doing their job and they see things in the right of ways? How do they know what's old, what's not, what's new? What if it's little? If it's flowers, they could be a perennial. They just came back, so they look new. How do you regulate? How is code with new officers coming and going and don't know what's been here? They're looking at it with fresh eyes. How do we regulate that? Does code know how to function that?
I mean, I think keep our building official. I mean, he's here. He'll have the longevity with that. We do have two code officers now, so in theory, if one leaves, we still have the other one. Most of the time, you can see it when you drive down the street. You can see when people are putting in new landscaping, didn't pull a permit. I mean, it's pretty simple to see that. I mean, I think, yeah, that's the answer to your question. I think. So
my point is just like I keep going back to regulation, and I'm all for doing this in pieces. And I like that the goal is not to go out and basically have everything ripped out and start over. I like that you're saying that. I just don't know how we actually be successful at basically regulating this and monitoring it. But thanks for the
just
answer.
little tools that we use now, more than ever is, Google Maps and Papa. Like you can get on Google Maps and see when, go back a year or two and you can see that it was planted there or that it was there, and you can go now and you can see, well, that's not there now, and usually it's date stamped on that. So that's a tool that we use. I know there was one with a cracked sidewalk that they, said the village did, but you go back and you look 4 years ago, it was already there. So like it really wasn't the village. So there are a lot of tools like that we could use that show, something was there prior or not.
And all due respect to you, I agree that we can use these as tools. I don't think we should rely solely on those because not all of them are updated often. And again, based on when we make this a little more concrete, if this goes forward, what's the date point then for residents? Couldn't they say, oh, I did these in June of 2025? I go back to, so I wish you luck on how to regulate this. But I'm all for keeping our pipes and everything safe. Please get that right. I think some people are going to be very upset because they aren't going to have a lot to work with, and our driveways are not going to be helpful.
I wanted to read a message I got, and this is an interesting perspective because the perspective is usually the opposite of this. This morning, someone installed a sign at the northeast corner of our property. Although the sign is in the village right-of-way, the emplacement of the sign and the sign itself demonstrates poor judgment that is problematic. The installation of the sign required digging in a space where there's 2 water lines and electrical utility lines. Last time a construction crew digged in that space, they broke the line twice, and it was a real nuisance. It seems very basic not to dig over these lines. It seems to me that whoever's doing this work should assign a higher priority being less invasive than they currently are. It poses a risk of harm unnecessarily. So, that's one sign in a right-of-way for a construction project. And yet you want to see trees and all these other things in the right-of-way, and then
I
sent
hear
that
you.
email out before.
But I go back to what Vice Mayor said, if we use common sense and people pull permits, I just don't like the limiting of what could be in there if there's enough space away from the utilities. But I agree with Vice Mayor, just people have to pull permits if you're in the right of way. Just like Mr. Painter said, and you have to know the risks. It might come out. If you put in muley grasses, I mean, they might be coming out at some point. That's the risk. So don't put anything super expensive or lifelong there. But I like the idea of having more options. Again, because like those corner lots, we're gonna have naked corner lots now. There's plenty of room to have more options away from the utilities. But I like Vice Mayor. I'm gonna go with that. Just use common sense, pull a permit, call 811.
Patrick? Anything else?
Nothing else, no.
Mayor, Jason? My only question would be if there's some understanding from folks that we've heard from this evening that this is immediate and it's going to happen and there's going to be fines regardless. While we're looking, if we do move forward, and I hope we can get a consensus, make sure we understand what the consensus would be. Can we look at options or some language perhaps that would address current landscaping until a permit would be pulled, or can we look at something that may have that part of the code?
Yeah, I've seen some code as we were doing the research that says from this date forward, anything that was planted prior, stays the course. Knowing that,
Having said that,
if we have a project and
Right.
we have to come through there and rip stuff out, it's the property owner's responsibility. I mean, the other thing that I would offer, since most of this is cleanup and trying to combine the 7 chapters, if there are plants that you would like to see incorporated, we can take a look at them and see if there's, that if it doesn't, we can bring those back as well. So that'd be something I would say would be, something. You said that the list wasn't very good. Well, if you want to see some additional plantings, let us take a look at them and, meets the criteria.
Since we don't have 2 people here in front of us, are we in agreement to at least have legal counsel look at some additional options? And I think we might need to bring this back again before.
Fine with that, yeah.
I would appreciate if legal got a chance to look at it more in depth. Thank you.
Jason or Mayor?
I don't have anything further. I do think there needs to be some cleanup language, and we can get to that, but I would like to move forward on the project as a whole.
Okay, you may have lost the mayor. So I think we're in agreement that we'll at least get this information brought back to us, and maybe at the next workshop, or it may be at a future council meeting, depending on what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I understand the sentiment that's been verbalized, and understand what you've been presented tonight is not in ordinance form at all. It's very conceptual. So there's a lot of work to do still to get this into a format that would be presented for actual voting. I will do my best to get something back to you that's in ordinance form by your next workshop. I'm not
It'll
gonna
be
guarantee
important.
it, but there's this is conceptual. There's a lot to do before it's ready for prime time. So.
Okay, and sitting as the facilitator of this evening, I would appreciate that and believe that it's an emotionally charged issue, that a lot of people have some very strong opinions, and let's hear it all out. Agreement?
I'm good.
Good.
Thank you. Doug, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Item number 3, discussion of 1 Main Street and Paradise Park.
And I'm going to be really quick because I know Mr. Frankel's here, and I don't know if he wants to say any words, but he just kind of as an opening, because we have talked about this several different times. I did think it was important for me to just kind of talk about how this process came about, just to start. And Mr. Perko, which I believe is one of the owners of this property, called me and told me that he was putting it up for sale. At that point is when I triggered the idea of why doesn't the village entertain buying this? This wasn't, anything to do with, I think, the relationship that the developer has had with the village, with other projects. He offered to have the discussion about us putting it out for a referendum and entertain the idea of putting a lease to the property so that way we could go through that process. I think, it should be said that at least the developer, the owner, Mr. Frankel, Mr. Perko, have been willing to work with the village. This is not to say that whether it's right for the village or not. I mean, they were putting the property up. They had an appraisal for $9.8 million, offered to sell it to the village for $8.8 million less. At that point, we worked to get our own appraisal. Our own appraisal, which was stated last meeting, which is now part of your backup, came out at $8.45 million. So I know that we wanted to have this as a public discussion, and instead of just through the at the end of the last meeting after a couple hours, to really just have the discussion about Paradise Park and the desire to for the residents to have this park, but knowing the challenges with parking and the cost. I think we brought this back for discussion per council. Mr. Frankel is here. I don't know if he wants to say any words. I know he's on a short timeline, so he does have to go, but I believe you have all the backup you need that you guys requested. I know Jay's here. I know there's been discussions about the parking. I think that's covered, but if you have additional discussion about the parking, Jay can help with that as well. So with that, I turn it back over to you.
Mr. Frankel, you're on a timeline.
I'm good.
Okay. We'll do this out of order, but thank you for coming.
For the record, Tom Frankel, I'm the property owner with Phil Perko of Main Street. Jeremy pretty much said it accurately. We didn't approach the town about selling it, he approached us. We are open to lots of things. We are not like this way, our way or the highway. We're open. We've been trying to figure out what to do with this property. Whole Foods was interested. We were at the 1 yard line with the lease, and we did not do it because their demands were so overwhelming. And there's there's been a lot of discussion. We've thrown a lot of ideas at all you guys. Really haven't made much traction. We talked about variances and all that stuff. We would entertain a fair price for the property. $845, sure, right? And the lease number was discussed. We have to pay property taxes for a period of time. We obviously have a lot of carry costs involved. So, the number I think was thrown out at 100. We asked for 120. Again, we're a willing partner in this thing. Ultimately, whoever develops this property, if you don't buy it, it has to be a partnership to make this work. It's such a significant property for the town. We've been struggling with how to make it work, to be quite honest. And Phil's a residential developer. I'm a residential developer. Neither of us are really mixed-use developers. And there's a lot of mixed-use developers out there who have a lot of interest in the property and probably more expertise to make something happen. But again, we're open, and that's really all I want to say. So,
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. Appreciate that. Council, comments?
Jason still on?
This is Jason. I can go first.
Yes.
I think the owners are, having the conversation with us, and just over the last couple of years, I've enjoyed hearing from them, and I think it's a great group that I'd love to do business with. I think at the 8.45 price, even though it still is a fair price, I think we're very far off as a village on being able to afford it. And I believe that going to ballot with the residents, with the parking situation, would just create a lot of confusion. So in plain, I'm not for going ahead with this project as is, but if there's some other alternative solutions, some partnerships, I'm sure there's some improved solutions out there that we just need to uncover. I would be interested in finding a way to have that partnership or find a way for us to own that property. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. No, well, first I want to thank Mr. Frankel and Mr. Perko. I didn't even have to open up to that conversation when the village manager even brought that up. So thank you. I think you guys have been a good partner. You've worked with us. It's been at least a year we were working together on trying to make this property, special for everybody. As much as I wanted this to work, I think it would have been something really awesome for our village. I just think the parking requirements and the unknowns of what we could actually do for it at this time, I just don't think we're at a point where we can go to referendum on it, unfortunately. I don't think we'd be able to to deliver a clear picture to our residents as to what we could actually do with it. And that's where my hesitation is. But I think it was a great thing to look at, that we considered it. I think ultimately it would have been awesome for us to own it and have, like Mr. Frankel just said, it is a very significant property for our village. My fear is someone's going to come in who isn't willing to work with us as much as they were and, try to bully us around a little bit. But I do know we have certain, controls that we can, make sure that doesn't happen. But right now, I just don't think we're at a point where we can entertain it. And, maybe the lease is an option that we can look at. But right now, I just don't feel right putting it out to the residents with what we know or don't know.
Thank you. Ms. Brandon?
This property is like this thorn in my side. So, can we just clarify the lease amount of 120, 125, whatever it is, because it always goes back and forth. What was that to cover? The future till March, or back paying the property owner?
Well, I think on an annual basis, they had to pay taxes and insurance, so it was going to cover that for a year period, however you want to say, pay a little bit from behind, pay a little bit forward. It's just to cover their annual cost for insurance and taxes. That was what we had talked about prior. I know there was some language in there they were going to take half of that and deliver it toward the principal. I think if we move forward with any kind of lease agreement, which I don't know if we are at this point, we may drop some of that just to make it simpler, because we were, as we started some of this lease discussion and some of the language, it got pretty convoluted. So I know talking to them even today, we try to simplify that process a little bit, but still gonna be 125 with 25,000 probably estimated for maintenance costs throughout the year with tree trimming, mowing, utilities, those types of things. That's roughly, I think we were at 20,000 3 years ago when we were leasing it, so we're estimating about 25,000 now.
Okay, just to double check. Yeah. And again, I've said it last meeting, for the record, I've never said we should or shouldn't buy this property. We were just looking at if we should ask the voters to vote on it, because we always get asked about this property every time it comes up. We have since the past few months uncovered very complicated issues with the property. When the developer bought the property from the previous owner, they accepted the parking agreement. And I'm only saying this so residents can understand a little bit more. When they build a mixed use, they are able to accommodate those parking spaces, such as, I believe in one of their designs, there was a parking garage. If the village were to own this, we would not be building a parking garage. So we would be stuck with the parking spaces where they are currently. And then if we were to put anything of use on any of the back two parcels, we would have to create more parking for visitors, whether they were visiting or if we had an event there. And since also in the past few months, surrounding property owners have expressed parking issues on their properties when there is events. So there are a lot of things that came to light. I appreciate the appraisal we sought out for came back. I appreciate the property owner who owns it now coming down and accepting that appraisal as well. I still sit very in the middle. I understand my fellow council members are kind of really leaning towards one side. To be honest, I still just hear such mixed feedback from residents. I absolutely hear that is not a good deal. We should not even be talking about it. And then I hear a lot of residents also say, we would want a chance to try anything to get that property, and not necessarily to combat development, but to have ownership and skin in the game in that area, to safeguard an actual part of downtown that very well could be part of the future over there. So to be honest, I'm really stuck in the middle. I can kind of go either way. I'm not saying it's a good deal. If I were looking at this property, I would not buy it for me and my family. But again, this isn't my village. This is the residents' village. So we do, like Mr. Painter said, we do still have a couple little tidbits kind of unresolved. Council, I know staff has talked with the property owners, but council really hasn't had any conversations with them as a group. I don't like this time crunch, and it's just ticking away. We're going to be in October on Wednesday. I don't like doing that to the voters. Let's race this and not have all our ducks in a row and really know what we're doing. So that does leave me a little on consensus side with you guys, only mostly in fairness to the residents, because this is such a risky and expensive deal that would go through. I don't like the timeline passing us by so quickly. But to be fair and honest, I'm really sitting in the middle for multiple reasons. And because truly, I still to this day get really mixed feedback on both sides. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. I, for a different reason, I believe really don't want to take this off the tax rolls. Well, I was all for trying to acquire Paradise Park, as we call it. Try to make it a signature destination, consistent with One Main Street. I am just overly concerned about the village losing real estate tax income in some form or fashion. It will be on the ballot next year. If you listen to the current administration, they're going to have something that's going to be put forward. And it scares me that this is one of the two significant properties remaining in the village that can generate income. Right now, at least it's generating some tax revenue for us. I think to take it off the tax roll, I, along with I think every other council member, receive feedback pro and con. I've heard the people that I've heard say acquire the property, said acquire it, but at the village expense. They will not pay for a bond. I can't tell you that's enough to pass or defeat a bond issue. Everyone thinks the village should do it, and we have it in our backup every month at Village Council, what our investment reserves look like and our reserve accounts. And we are fiscally sound, we don't have the money to buy it. So not one person said, sure, bring a bond forward to us. So that's my concern from a financing standpoint. But it's in the mixed use. We spent a lot of time and energy on trying to develop overlays that may or may not at this time be enforceable or applicable due to Senate Bill 180. But I think it's mixed use. That's what it is called for in almost every document that I've seen since moving to the village. Comp plan, long range plan, you name it. Charrettes, people want to make it some type of destination. And I think a destination that is mixed use, again, I look at our role in being fiscally sound. And if we take this off the tax rolls, we lose what potentially could be, I don't know what the number would be as far as taxable revenue to us. But I think if this was a year from now, I would have a better comfort level taking something off the tax rolls, knowing what may or may not apply in a lame duck administration at the state level. But something's coming. I think there'll be something put forth to the voters. I don't know that. And that concerns me, is taking it off the roll. So I don't want to move forward with this just really because I don't think it's the right thing for the village from a fiscal responsibility point of view. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. Mayor?
Hey, thank you, Vice Mayor. I do want to thank the property owners for being willing to have the conversation with us, for us to potentially put out a bond referendum to purchase. But since there's been no changes to the shared parking agreement, and we would basically have to use taxpayer dollars for an entire parcel to accommodate parking for adjacent private property owners, I still don't believe that it would be fiscally responsible for us to move forward with the bond referendum to purchase that property. Thank you.
Okay. Public comment.
Marie Sapiri.
Excuse me. Sorry. Marie Sapiri, I live in the country club. The acquisition of Paradise Park, if it were possible, would be a great thing for the village because the village desperately needs more park space, and more park space is immensely beneficial to residents and the quality of life, not to mention property values. This location in particular would also benefit all of the local businesses along US 1 and immediately surrounding the park. It would be a major achievement for the village, and I do hope you will do everything in your power to make it possible. In that regard, though, I would like to ask through the chair for clarification. I appreciate the clarification earlier, but I'm still not sure I understand the parking status of the parking agreement, or the status of the parking agreement between One Main Street and the potential sellers, current owners. Specifically, it is not clear to me that whether the reference parking agreement complied with the village offsite parking requirements set out in the code at section 78-707C. It's my understanding that if these code requirements were not met, then any agreement between the owners is not binding on the village. And if that's the case, then the question of the parking deficiency on Main Street is an issue for the current property owners to resolve between themselves only. The village would not, in that case, have to agree to their private agreement if the village were to purchase these properties. And the village should not, and this issue should not deter us from moving forward to potentially purchase these properties. So I respectfully request that the status of the parking agreement be clarified publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. So the village manager, can we address that, or maybe Jay?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, and Jay can back me up. But I mean, really, what the property owner at the time owned all 4 parcels of the agreement. Mr. Frankel is here, and he can clarify too if I'm in the wrong in any of this. But they owned all 4 parcels. When they decided to purchase the other 3, they wrote it into the agreement that any future development would not hinder. They'd have to get approval, and they couldn't put them in a non-conforming use. So if they needed, 90 spots, they would have to make sure even though they took and sold that part of it, they would have to leave and make sure that property stayed in compliance. So at the time, when they owned all 4 parcels, shared parking, not a problem. They had all 4 parcels. But when they decided to sell that property and they put that language in that agreement, that became the problem. And this is just my terms. The property owner that sold the property basically, got value out of that. Still has value in that property, even though they don't own it anymore, because they have 50 something spots that they still have value in that they got money for. And that's just my terms. That's the way that I put it in, and Jay can add anything more to it, maybe get a little even more technical than me, but.
The answer is it's an extremely complicated parking situation, and dating back to 1999, when the current building with Italiano was built, they actually showed the parking that's off-site in one of the other parcels being used for the Italiano building. Then in 2021, when the Harvey School came in and was getting a special exception, there is indication in the staff reports that there were 110 spaces that were being utilized for that entire plaza on site. And so, to Ms. Perry's point, the village probably procedurally in 1999 should have recorded an off-site parking agreement to formalize that off-site parking agreement, but and they essentially counted those spaces without the off-site agreement. So they took action as if those spaces were being used for that current building. So I defer to Keith as always, but I don't see any way that we would be able to approve anything on those vacant parcels that would bring the Italiano building out of compliance with their required parking standards. That's my answer. Keith, any thoughts?
Nothing I could add.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Pierre, I know, just because you asked for clarification.
Yeah, that actually didn't quite answer my question. So my question is that, and perhaps I don't understand, but my understanding is that off-site parking agreements have to be approved, and that would be between the 2 current property owners, like that piece. So that would be when it was purchased in 2023, that it would have to come back. We couldn't rely on something from 1999, especially since they weren't separate owners. And yeah, I can see the chain of why you would have done it in 1999, but when they become owned by separate people, that link is broken.
So in 1999, they should have put a recorded off-site parking agreement onto whatever parcel was being used for that parking. From what I can see, they did not actually record that. And so that's where we're at. In an ideal world, they would have recorded that. But in 2023, the fact that off-site parking agreement wasn't recorded in 1999 didn't prohibit the property from being sold to the current owners.
So is it legally binding?
Well, I think what we look at is is this being passed on, again, we're building consensus, is this being passed on because of the unknown of this parking agreement? Or I know I'm not in favor, has nothing to do with the parking agreement. I don't want to take it off the tax rolls. think the mayor, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, I think Councilmember French thinks the value is too high. So I think with or without the parking agreement, because the appraisal we did obtain does take into account a discounted value for for the parking agreement. So if the current owner's got it at 9.8 and we got it for 8.45, that included, my understanding is, the discounted value of the property based on a parking agreement. So I guess it comes down to why can't we find consensus on the dais? Is it because the value is too high that we don't want to pay for it? I don't want to take it off the tax rolls, and I don't want to put it to a referendum. I think it should be a mixed-use property. And I don't want to speak, I heard Mr. French say the value's too high. But I think while it may be an issue that we could, again, kick the can down the road for yet another month and spend more time on this, but is that the reason why we can't come to a consensus? That's my question.
Does the consensus have to be on the dais, or does it include Zoom people? Because I'm pretty sure it's clear the consensus overall. And I know last meeting, the mayor made her comment.
My understanding, I've always believed a consensus means all 5 of you are of a like mind. That's a consensus. If it's not, then it requires a motion and a vote, which cannot be taken at a workshop.
Mine's a little bit all over.
Yeah.
A big part of it, I agree with, I think, most of council. I don't think that's a good deal that we'd be paying for one parcel to be all parking. I also think we need, not that I'm asking for more time, but again, this timeline that it's just ticking away makes me just very anxious. And I don't do business that like rush, especially again, this is such a delicate piece for so many in the village. Knowing that, like the value, okay, so the owner very nicely was like, hey, I'd be willing to go down to your appraisal. Was that the only conversation? Could there be more conversation? And in that conversation, discussing maybe the D value, so to speak, of the parking agreement. Also, is there something in the village, staff-wise, with the parking agreement, depending on how binding it is? I mean, that parking lot's not always full. So what happens if the previous owner, who still owns the one parcel, I mean, it sounds like that owner made a bad deal too. I mean, is it that our job to clean up that and pay for it? Or can we have a conversation with that owner? And then is there technically a way that council could discuss with that owner, how do we work this out? Is there a special exception? Looking at I'm not saying that's the way, but I feel like the conversations aren't done. And that's why I'm kind of not one way or the other. It's definitely not black and white for me. I don't think this right today. I don't think this is a good deal for the village residents' money.
Can I say, it's an extremely complicated parking issue to litigate at the podium like this, back and forth.
I fully agree.
But I will say, which just adds to the issues here, right? Because I can't even, at this late at night, I can't get my brain to fully explain it to you guys properly. But I will say that one thing I did not mention, I think Jeremy touched on, is in 2023, when the current owners purchased the property from the Italiano building, there was an addendum to that purchase agreement, and in that addendum it said that the purchaser can do nothing to bring the current building out of compliance with the parking code.
So I'm hearing staff and our legal counsel say there's nothing else to add.
Yes.
That's if we want to go against staff and our legal counsel.
No, I as far as the value, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that'll pay, 8.45 or more. I think there's too much uncertain. Well, I don't even know if it's uncertainty. There's going to be some issues with the parking, it would sound like. I don't disagree with your point. Taking it off the tax roll, that's significant. I would love nothing more than to turn this into a park. I just don't think it's the most fiscally prudent thing right now. I mean, could we put it out to the residents? Sure. I just don't think we could really. I don't think it would be so open-ended right now. We wouldn't be able to put anything really in the verbiage in the referendum. Like originally, we had had some pretty clear guidelines on what we thought we could do with it, and I just don't think that's certain right now. And I think out of fairness, not that the property owner is waiting for us to make a decision, but out of fairness for them, I don't think we should kick this another month. I just they need to make a decision. And go ahead.
Just brainstorm.
Can I chime in, Vice Mayor?
Yes, please.
I want to say we've been talking about this for months. I don't think it's been rushed. And you know, our parks purchasing policy is very clear about the process too, and how we would go about negotiating a potential purchase of a property. So, you know, we already have that policy in place to guide us there. And I think, you know, with the parking restraints that we have, even if we decided that we did want to go out for bond referendum, knowing those parking restraints, how are we going to even develop anything ourselves? Because we're going to have to have more parking for that. So I feel like the amount of land we can actually develop for a park would be so small. And, you know, I think that's very difficult to explain via a bond referendum. And we are here and elected by our constituents to make these smart choices, because we're the ones that are supposed to fully educate ourselves on the matters, right? Not the constituents. So I just want to throw that out there, and, you know, my statement that I said earlier remains.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Frankel.
You know, there's a lot of concerns and talk about all this parking. I have a suggestion, and just trying to facilitate this one way or the other, is maybe we or us together just engage someone for a couple $1,000s and do a site plan study of how it could fit, how much of a park you can get, and how many spaces you actually need on the property based on the uses in the building that are there and so forth. Just, it would be quick, and you see, and then you're either going to have not enough room for a park and it's just not worth your money, or, you know, maybe it's not that bad, because you also have parking along Main Street, and I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah, just to even have it a park, we have to change the zoning. So it's just another step, because currently we couldn't put a park on a mixed-use parcel, could we? So just multiple steps.
Yeah, we raised it open space zoning and comp plan. Yeah.
Let me complicate this a little bit more and add to Ms. Brandon's point. Probably is that if we don't have a consensus tonight, it will show up on your next agenda in October to say yes or no, and then by November we have to have 75 words and approve that language for the ballot by November council meeting. And
When
so,
you say October, is the October council meeting, not the October.
No, the October council meeting, we have to have an official vote. Are we moving forward or not? If we don't have consensus tonight, and then we will draft of 75 words to put on the ballot that we have to vote on, yes or no, we're putting on the ballot in November, because we have to turn that in by the first week in December.
Yeah.
So and I don't want to, you guys tell me if you want to do the space study, you know, have consensus to do that, we can do that. I mean, we serve at the pleasure of the council.
Yeah.
So.
But I think if the definition of consensus is that the 5 people moving in the same direction, I don't think we have that right this evening. So
then we would come back and we'd go home tonight, try to put this on the agenda for next week or for the 9th, and then you guys would vote on moving forward or not.
is there anybody here that's a yes or?
In reference to a study, I mean, I think we have enough to scale drawings to visualize where it would all fit and not fit. I don't think that's necessary to spend a couple grand. I don't think. I'm pretty sure I could figure that out. And I'm pretty sure there's consensus already.
Consensus of not moving forward. That's what I'm hearing, but I don't want to speak for everybody.
No, I mean, the past few meetings, the last meeting and this meeting, for me, I'm hearing that the consensus is not to move forward.
That's what I'm hearing, and that's what I'm in favor of, is not moving forward.
Is that what the attorney hears?
I agree too.
Okay.
Yeah, I do appreciate the offer to do the parking study. I don't even know how long that would take to get. I have no idea. I think the question is, you know, is that going to change what the vote could be? You know, I don't know if
I can tell you, I sorry to interrupt you.
No.
It could be, we could fit all 3 parcels. I don't think we take it off the tax roll. So I'm hard to move off of my position. So I hear we don't have consensus.
Yeah, I'm not a hard no. For me, this isn't fully vetted. I know we've been talking about it for months, but I feel like it could be better for the residents. And I'm just, yeah, and like I said, I'm really stuck in the middle.
I mean, I don't hate the idea of doing this parking study.
You know how I feel about studies.
We'll do it anyway.
I just think, like we've all said, this is a significant property. I'd like to beat this up as much as we can. I think we all have our reasons for, thinking it's a good idea or not a good idea, and ultimately we might decide it's not a good idea. To me, something just got brought up that we haven't discussed yet, and that might change my mind. It could change a few of our minds. I don't know. So, yeah, I'm okay with going forward with the parking study, because to me, whether or not do I think 8.45 is a good purchase? I don't even know. I mean, obviously the appraiser did. To me, it's more about, we have had so much opinion from residents as to what this property, these parcels could be or what they should be, and this is the opportunity to potentially do that. If a parking study could potentially answer some questions for us, I mean, who knows? Maybe it comes back and we're all, me included, are thinking that the parking is more of a problem than it could be. So, yeah, I'm okay doing that.
Ms. Brandon?
I'm in the middle. Are you gonna front it?
Yeah, we'll do it.
Okay. I mean, I'm not asking for this message to be in the next meeting. I mean,
I think it has to be, though.
Has to be.
Yeah, which is fine.
We'll get it. We should be able to get it.
What's 75?
Well-
It won't be able to be done by October 9th.
It will not be?
No.
so my point
And
with
we have
that
to-
is that's what
publish the
that's what I
agenda.
mean by the time is ticking. It's not that we haven't been talking about this for a few months. It's to really get all the ducks in a row. That's the time that's ticking. This is a process, and
It's rough,
anyone
right?
that buys property like this knows it's not, you just don't show up and go, oh, I want this, here's cash and give it to me. It's a lot of logistics that go in, and that's what I mean by the time is ticking, and I'm not 100% comfortable delivering the option to the residents yet, because it's not ready.
Well, I think that matters.
If the parking thing gets done, I mean, and it misses our timeline, that's a whole new conversation.
Yeah, if it
That-
can't be, if the
that's
parking study
gonna
can't be here by
bump
October 9th, which isn't going to answer any more questions we have tonight, then that would matter, right? Because we'd have to know by the next council meeting. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll put it on there. We'll just go ahead and put it, just stop,
Let's see how fast we can
Get
go.
off the
Instead of
merry-go-round.
going around the wagon, we'll put it on the next council meeting. We'll see if the study can be done, and that may make your guys' decision
Yeah.
yes or no at that point. And if it's a no, then that'll put it to rest. If it's a yes, we'll continue down the path.
We talk about a lot of stuff here, probably more than we should. I think this one deserves it. I mean, that's just my opinion.
You're very true.
What's that?
Very true.
Yeah, so let's do it.
Can we ask for some direction? So what would you be looking for in the parking study?
I think a realistic view of how much, I guess whatever.
It was from our point of view, though. It wasn't for development, right? Did I hear that?
For you guys buying?
Yeah.
So if the village had it as a park, what would the parking? That's what it was.
Yeah,
That's
do we,
how I understood it.
I'm just going to say this, I don't even know if it makes sense, but we're all saying that realistically, we'd have to give up a whole parcel for parking. That may not be true. I think it's trying to answer that question.
Okay.
Is it,
That's how I took it too.
yeah, is it half of it? Is it 3/4 of it? I don't know. And then I think we can make a decision.
So I have a quick question, if I could chime in. Usually a parking study is done for either existing buildings, like what we've done in the past on when we updated our guest and visitor and loading zone parking requirements, or a parking study would be done for an actual plan development, so you know what the actual impacts are. So what exactly are we looking for from a parking study? Because we're not going to have a plan to provide of what we would develop there to get an idea of the parking. Yes, we could do a parking study of what existing uses with the buildings at the adjacent properties that use the parking. But I guess I want more clarity on what exactly we're asking for and what data or outcome we're looking for from the parking study.
Well, so the way I'm viewing it is, I think we take it as the worst case scenario on what the parking could be, whatever that is. And we know we want it to be some kind of park. ideally it'd be all 3 parcels. We know it's not going to be that. But if we could somehow take that worst case scenario and make it work with some kind of plan that we've been kicking around for the last few months, and they're offering to pay for it. Usually I don't like studies either, but this one's, I appreciate that, by the way. To me, I don't see a downside here. Other than talking about it one more time, which again, there's so much we talk about up here over and over again. This one to me is worth it.
Well, I look at parking studies that we did, like the mayor had said, it was peak usage. I think somebody's going to go out there and monitor that parking lot, maybe on a weekend. They can get it in time and say that it's overparked, that there's a lot of unused spaces that are out there. That doesn't take away the fact that if we take them away, then we put somebody into non-compliance. So I think we're going to get a parking study that's going to say it's overparked.
I think parking study is probably the wrong term. It should be.
Well, I think it's more of a site plan.
More of a site plan option.
Yeah.
So what we'd be trying to do here is determine how many spaces the current Italiano building is required or mandated by code to provide, which actually nobody actually knows the exact number. We have not. It's very complicated.
I think we go worst case scenario.
So we'll go for that. Then determine how much space that would take up on the site, and then figure out how much acreage is left over, and then figure out how much parking we would have to provide for our own park on top of that. I think Ms. Brandon brought that up earlier. So then at the end of this, we would be able to determine we have X amount of acreage that is actually buildable for a park. It might be 1.5 acres, it might be 2. I don't know what the number is. But I think what you're looking for, right?
Absolutely. And what about, do we have to take into account anything with Wells Fargo?
There's 21 spaces we know that
for
Wells Fargo.
Okay.
And roughly 40 plus for the Italiano building.
Okay. I think we just, I hate to say worst case scenario, but I think we have to go off of what it could be and go from there. I mean, we're talking a little bit of time. That's fine.
I think we can get that done even this week.
I'm okay. I think it's
as long as we can get back in time to get it properly.
Yeah, I think we have to. Unfortunately, we're in this position now. We don't have a choice. So let's do it. That's my opinion.
All right.
Okay.
Are all five of you of a like mind?
I don't think so.
Well, what we're going to do, Keith, we're going to put it on the agenda for next Wednesday or next Thursday. And then the short term, they're going to see if they can get this parking study done. That will help them make their decision next Thursday.
Well, the property owner wants to do it. You guys can do whatever you want.
We have to put it on the agenda either way because we don't have a consensus.
I can't let council direct staff to do something in this workshop setting.
So you need consensus to even move forward with doing the site plan study.
If you're directing staff to do it, if the property owner wants to do it, you guys can do whatever you want to do. We have no control over directing you to do anything. So you can take this conversation to heart and do whatever you think is in your best interest.
Okay.
So what do you need from us? Nothing?
What's that?
I'll just look at the attorney.
Well,
So what were you saying? What were you saying we have consensus on? I apologize. My Zoom was cutting in and out.
This is Keith, Mayor. From what I've heard in this discussion, nothing on this topic.
Oh, okay. I thought you said we had consensus, and I'm like, I don't think we do.
I said you have
so how much would this? Okay, sorry. That's hence I said the Zoom's cutting in and out. How much would the site plan study be?
Nothing to you.
They've offered to pay for it, Mayor Molly.
Yeah. The owner has offered to pay.
Yeah.
But because there's kind of a
Unknown.
well, there's a 3-2-4-1 position up here.
Sorry.
I think to put it to rest and give it a vote, because consensus is not, but I hear staff saying, well, perhaps we just put it on the agenda. And if we get a site plan study or site plan proposal that can show the parking, then it could be, we thought this would be a quick discussion as well.
This is thorn in our side.
So again, my position won't change because I don't want to take off the tax roll. So I'll leave it to legal counsel. I don't want to be to kill this thing because I'm willing to talk about it again at the next meeting. So if it's to say yes, I'm in agreement to see if we can put it on the account on the council agenda with the assumption or hope that maybe we'll get something to look at, then I would agree to that. Just knowing that there will be a vote taken at the next council meeting.
Yeah, I agree with that. that we need to vote at the next council meeting. If we have a site plan, great. But yeah, if we're still paying for adjacent private property owner parking for a good portion of it, again, it's just going to be hard for me to justify using taxpayer dollars for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll support it on the next agenda as well. This is all about working a deal, and I think this is part of it. So we'll have to see what comes out of it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Frankel. Item number 4, discussion on establishing a permit process for commercial motion picture use permit.
So from time to time, we have received an application from a company or different companies to film a movie or picture scene here in the village of Tequesta. I think in my 6 years, we probably had 6 or 7 of them. They're very small. We had one the weekend before last where they just came in and filmed a scene. We've had one at a couple out at Constitution Park. With that, we don't really have a process for these. So this is just for council discussion to put together a formal process. Right now, we have them do a special events application, but our code is pretty specific that special events applications are only for residents or businesses with a valid BTR. And so while it hasn't been an issue, I've been able to approve these administratively. Sure would be great if there was a better process in place that, did that. So when I reached out to Mr. Davis had done these in a city or two, or at least one, provided me some draft language. We haven't put it in code form, but we have put it up for discussion. I think it allows for, similar special events process where they'll, submit the application. It'll go to staff, police, fire, public works, rec, depending on, what the application looks like, and then our staff review it. With that, we would propose a similar application fee for special events in the amount of $40, and that would be per day if they were doing it multiple days, and they would cover additional staff costs if we have to do anything with police or fire or any other staff. They would have to cover those costs. That hasn't been the case in previous, but my previous city, we had a couple of filmings that were multiple days and multiple people and took staff several hours. So we will allow for that in the code. So with that, have that for discussion for council to decide. But I think it's just really just formalizing a process, not to muddy the waters, but to give us something that gives us a process to approve or disapprove these.
Thank you.
And just to tighten that down a little, I mean, this would deal with situations where somebody wanted to come in and on village property, on rights of way, basically ask to temporarily, shut it down. This is not about a personal or family event. This is not about Channel 5 coming in and shooting a story for the 6 o'clock news, or this is not about a college student or high school student's project. This is about production company coming in. We want to use Village Hall parking lot. We need to shut it down so we can making sure that the appropriate protections are in place. That's what this is about. One thing we really can't deal with would be to the extent drones are used. Drone regulations are preempted to the state. But this is sort of on the ground. We want to come in and interfere with these public places to shoot our movie, our TV show, our commercial, do a print, whatever. That's what this is about.
Council, any comments?
I would comment on the definitions. Commercial motion picture probably needs to be defined in more detail, unless the vagueness was on purpose.
That's an example that needs to be expanded to include all the things I just mentioned, for sure.
Okay, thank you. And then I support it. I don't have any other comments.
My legal question is, I know you were talking about village areas. Would they be allowed to go into neighborhoods? And I ask because Palm Beach used to be really known for having movies shot in their area, and a lot of them too, and I think about this because we have the river, if they're doing a boat scene and you can see people's backyards, where does the privacy, and I don't know the answer and I don't expect to. I just want to make sure we're covered on that. And an example would be Heartbreakers. They ran boats up and down the intercoastal, and you could see backyards of those beautiful mansions, which are very recognizable. So I don't know if they asked permission from those property owners that they could be in it. And that was a very commercial shooting.
Not to be too vague, but you know, there are certain places, the
I know, I learned about
expectation
that,
of
like,
privacy on public property is
Different than
very
private.
limited. The expectation of privacy on private property can range the spectrum. I mean, if you're standing in your driveway in your front yard, there's much less of an expectation of privacy than if you're standing in a fenced-in enclosed backyard or inside your residence. So
Okay.
there's not an easy answer that
I know it's not, but
there are laws about expectations of privacy, and certainly we would require any permit that's issued under this regulatory scheme to comply with those laws. They would, you know, we don't have to redefine those laws. They exist now, and we would say, you know, you're required to get consent or be mindful of.
Yeah, I guess
privacy
another
rights
point
and
to
so
my, like in my shooting world, and this goes into minors, maybe when they pull a permit, they have to identify where they want to shoot.
Certainly.
So the village knows they'll be shooting near, let's say on the water, they're doing a tubing scene, and there's visible backyards. I would very much appreciate the village, because they have that permit, inform those residents, because there could be a young teen in a very risky bathing suit
And
out
there
back.
are laws
and
about.
They don't really want to be in a motion picture.
No, and there are laws about minors, and
There are.
So those would all have to be complied with
Okay.
as a baseline.
I just want to make sure that's covered,
condition.
because I'd hate the village to be going down that road.
Yeah, no, all of that would be taken into consideration for sure.
Perfect.
Mayor? I have no comments. Mayor?
Keith addressed a lot of the questions that I had. So kind of like what Councilmember French said, I just hope that when we see the final ordinance draft, that it kind of clarifies what is and is not applicable to that code. And then would this also include professional photography, or do we already have a separate ordinance for photography?
Well, I think, so if it's I guess it depends on, you know, if you've got a production company coming in wanting to do like a print ad and they're taking a bunch of still shots, that it may very well be captured. If you're talking about, I'm personally taking pictures of a family member for a wedding invitation or something, it probably wouldn't. It's but I think it would be captured in the definition of, to Councilmember French's comment, the definition of commercial, and probably motion picture is not even the right term. It would need to be, you know, filming or film/photography type of thing.
Okay, yeah, so that could just be addressed as well. That would be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're in a consensus to move forward on that. Okay.
Yes.
Any public comment? Okay, I guess the next issue is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You scared me. I thought there was another issue.
So did I. I'm like, wait a second. Did you update the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.
So here's a caution.
Zach.
They all need.
Yeah. As it should. Yeah. It's even like the schools.